Princess Ara pressed her fingers against the glowing screen in the forbidden archive room. The images of Earth filled her vision with blues and greens she had never seen on her home world. Humans walked through their cities, laughed, created art, and lived lives that seemed so similar to her own people. How could they be the monsters her father claimed? The archive room was deep in the oldest part of the Crystal Palace, where few guards bothered to patrol. Ara had discovered it 3 cycles ago while exploring the abandoned wings. Inside were thousands of records about humanity that the Emperor had ordered sealed after the Great Conflict. But Ara needed to understand. She needed to know why her people hated humans so much. "Princess, you must leave now." The voice made her jump. Commander Tesh stood in the doorway, his violet skin pale with worry. "The High Council has called an emergency session. Your handmaid told them where you were." Ara's heart sank. She had been betrayed. "Tesh, I was only reading. I wasn't doing anything wrong." "In your father's eyes, this is worse than treason." Tesh stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He believes humans corrupted your mind. The Council wants your death, Princess." Before Ara could respond, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. 6 royal guards entered, their weapons charged and ready. Behind them came Emperor Valken himself, his tall frame filling the doorway. His face was cold as the winter ice fields of the northern continent. "My daughter, the traitor." His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. "I gave you everything. A palace, education, a future ruling at my side. And you spit on it all for these animals." Ara stood straight, refusing to show fear. "Father, they are not animals. If you would only look at the records, you would see." "Silence." Valken's roar made the crystal walls vibrate. "The humans destroyed the colony world of Tekvar. 3 million Veltari dead because of their reckless terraforming. They knew the planet was inhabited and they poisoned it anyway. I watched the survivors die in my arms, their lungs burned by human chemicals." "But the records say it was an accident," Ara protested. "They didn't know we were there. Our colony was underground and I said silence." The Emperor's hand struck her across the face. Ara stumbled but did not fall. "You defend them? You defend the murderers of your own people?" The High Council members filed in behind the Emperor. 12 of the oldest and most powerful Veltari in the Empire, their faces carved from stone. Council leader Resh spoke first. "Princess Ara has violated the sacred laws. She has studied forbidden knowledge and speaks in defense of humanity. The law demands death." Ara felt her blood turn cold. Around her, the guards raised their weapons. But Emperor Valken held up his hand. "No, death is too easy, too clean. My daughter wishes to learn about humans? Then let her learn what it means to be cast out. Alone, with nothing. Like the humans left our people on Tekvar." He turned to face Ara directly. "I banish you to the Whispering Forest. You will be stripped of your royal marks, given only basic survival tools, and left to die like the exiled trash you have become. If you somehow survive, you are never to return. You are no longer my daughter. You are no longer Veltari." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Ara felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Father, please, take her." Valken turned away, unable or unwilling to look at her anymore. "Prepare her for exile." The guards grabbed Ara's arms roughly. They dragged her through the palace halls where she had played as a child. Servants and nobles turned away as she passed, afraid to show any sympathy. In the preparation chamber, they stripped away her royal robes and cut off her ceremonial hair. They removed the silver marks from her skin that identified her as nobility. Each cut burned like fire. When they were done, Ara barely recognized herself in the reflection. She looked like a common worker, not a princess. They dressed her in rough traveling clothes and gave her a small pack containing a water purifier, a basic shelter sheet, a knife, and 3 days of rations. Commander Tesh supervised the preparation. When the other guards were not looking, he pressed something small into her hand. "A data crystal," he whispered. "Survival information about the forest." "I am sorry, Princess. May the stars guide you." They loaded Ara onto a transport ship. The journey to the Whispering Forest took 2 days. She spent the time looking out at the stars, wondering if she would ever see them again from the palace. The forest was on the Forgotten Continent, a place where the Empire dumped its criminals and exiles. Few survived more than a month. The transport landed at the forest's edge just before sunset. The pilot did not even look at her as the door opened. "Out now." Ara stepped onto the dark soil. The air was thick and heavy, filled with strange smells. Before her stretched an endless sea of trees that glowed with soft blue and purple light. The forest was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The transport door slammed shut behind her. The engines roared and the ship lifted back into the sky. Within seconds it was gone, leaving Ara alone in the growing darkness. She stood at the forest's edge for a long moment, her pack heavy on her shoulders. Behind her was everything she had known. Before her was almost certain death. But Ara was still alive, and while she lived, she would fight to survive. She checked her pack one more time. The knife was sharp. The water purifier worked. And hidden in her hand was Tesh's data crystal. It was not much, but it was enough to start. Ara took a deep breath and stepped into the whispering forest. The glowing plant seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, clicks, whistles, and low groans that could have been animals or the forest itself. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but Ara was her father's daughter even if he denied her now. She had royal blood in her veins and she had been trained in survival, biology, and tactics. She would not die in this forest. She would learn its secrets. She would grow strong, and someday, perhaps, she would prove that her father was wrong about everything. The forest swallowed her whole, and the night closed in around her like a fist. The first night almost killed her. Ara had walked for hours into the forest, trying to put distance between herself and the drop point. She did not know if her father would send hunters, but she could not risk staying near the edge. The glowing plants provided enough light to see, but they also cast strange shadows that seemed to move and breathe. She found a small clearing between two massive trees and set up her shelter sheet. The fabric was thin, but it would keep the morning dew off her. As she worked, something screamed in the distance. The sound was high and sharp, like metal scraping against metal. Ara froze, her hand on her knife. The scream came again, closer this time. Then she heard the clicking. It started soft but grew louder, coming from multiple directions at once. Click, 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 click. Whatever made that sound was hunting. Ara abandoned her shelter and climbed the nearest tree. Her muscles burned as she pulled herself up branch by branch. She had never climbed much in the palace, but fear gave her strength. She reached a thick branch 20 feet up and pressed herself flat against the trunk. Below, 6 shapes emerged from the darkness. They were low to the ground, moving on 6 legs each. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that reflected the blue plant light. Prey beasts. Ara had read about them in the data crystal during her walk. They hunted in packs and could smell fear. The lead beast sniffed at her abandoned shelter. With one swipe of its claws, it tore the fabric to pieces. The pack circled the clearing, clicking to each other in some kind of language. They knew she was close. Ara held her breath. Her arms shook from holding her position. One of the beasts looked up, its 6 eyes scanning the trees. For a horrible moment, those eyes locked onto hers. The beast opened its mouth, showing rows of crystal teeth. Then thunder rolled across the sky. Rain began to fall, hard and cold. The prey beasts scattered, seeking shelter from the storm. Within minutes, they were gone. Ara stayed in the tree all night, soaked and shivering. When the purple sun finally rose, she climbed down on numb legs. Her shelter was destroyed. Her pack was half buried in mud. But she was alive. That was day 1. The weeks that followed became a blur of survival. Ara learned to read the forest's patterns. The glowing plants were brightest at night, using the darkness to attract insects. During the day, they folded their leaves to conserve energy. She learned which ones were safe to eat and which would make her sick. The blue flowers provided water if you squeezed them carefully. The purple moss could be used to treat cuts and burns. She found a massive hollow tree in a protected valley and made it her home. The inside was dry and hidden from view. She carved out a sleeping area and storage spaces for her tools. Using branches and vines, she created simple traps to catch small animals. The meat was tough and tasted strange, but it kept her alive. Commander Tesh's data crystal was her teacher. Each night she would read its contents by the light of the glowing plants. It taught her how to find north by watching the way certain trees grew. It showed her how to make rope from bark fibers. It explained which animal sounds meant danger and which meant opportunity, but the forest was cruel. One day she fell into a hidden pit and twisted her ankle badly. She dragged herself back to her tree and spent 3 days unable to walk. Fever took her, and she dreamed of the palace, of her father's face, of the soft bed she would never sleep in again. She survived by drinking flower water and eating the emergency rations she had been saving. When the fever finally broke, she was thin and weak, but her ankle had healed enough to walk. The forest had tested her and found her worthy to live another day. Ara began to explore farther from her tree. She made maps in the dirt, marking water sources and dangerous areas. She learned to move silently through the undergrowth, placing each foot carefully to avoid snapping branches. The cray beasts still hunted at night, but now she knew how to avoid them. She climbed trees at dusk and did not come down until dawn. On the 40th day, she discovered the caves. She had been tracking a small stream up into the hills, hoping to find its source. The water here was clearer than in the lowlands, and she wanted to refill her purifier. The stream led to a cliff face covered in hanging vines. Behind the vines was a narrow opening, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. Inside, the cave opened into a vast chamber. Ara lit a torch she had made from dried wood and tree sap. The light reflected off the walls, revealing something impossible. Symbols. Hundreds of them carved deep into the stone. They covered every surface from floor to ceiling. Some were clearly Veltari, the ancient script used before the Empire unified the language. But others were different. They were made of straight lines and curves that seemed almost human. Ara moved closer, her torch held high. One section of wall showed two figures standing side by side. One had the tall, thin body of a Veltari. The other was shorter, stockier, with the proportions of a human. Between them was a symbol that looked like two hands clasped together. Her hearts pounded. This made no sense. Humans and Veltari had only made contact 40 cycles ago, during the colony incident. But these carvings were ancient, worn smooth by time and water. They had to be thousands of cycles old. What did it mean? Had humans been to this world before? Had they lived here alongside the Veltari? If so, why did no one know about it? Ara spent hours studying the walls, copying symbols onto a piece of bark with charcoal. Some of the writing told stories. She could only understand fragments, but they spoke of sharing knowledge, of teaching and learning, of friendship between the stars. But there were other symbols too. Dark ones. They showed conflict, separation, and something else. A third figure, different from both human and Veltari. This figure appeared again and again, always in scenes of violence and destruction. As Ara studied the final wall, a sound echoed from outside the cave. It was faint but unmistakable, a regular beeping pattern, electronic, artificial. She froze. No one should be out here. The Empire had abandoned this continent centuries ago, unless her father had sent hunters after all. Ara extinguished her torch and pressed herself against the cave wall. The beeping continued, growing slightly louder. It was not Veltari technology. The pattern was wrong, the frequency different. Then she heard another sound, a voice speaking words she did not understand. The language was harsh, full of sharp consonants and flat vowels. It was not any Veltari dialect she knew. It was human, impossible. Humans did not come to Veltari space. Not after the colony incident. Not after the treaties and the Cold War that followed. What was a human doing in the Whispering Forest? Ara's mind raced. She should hide. Humans were dangerous, violent, unpredictable. That was what her father had taught her, what every Veltari child learned from birth. But she had also read the records in the forbidden archives. She had seen humans laugh and cry and love. She had studied their art, their music, their poetry. And now she stood in a cave that suggested humans and Veltari had once lived together in peace. The beeping was fading now, moving away from the cave. If she was going to investigate, she had to move now. If she stayed hidden, she might never get another chance to learn the truth. Ara grabbed her knife and squeezed back through the cave entrance. The sun was setting, painting the forest in deep purple and orange light. In the distance, she could see smoke rising above the trees. Something had crashed, and whatever it was human. Ara stood at the edge of the vines, torn between fear and curiosity. Everything she had been taught told her to run, but everything she had learned in these caves suggested that maybe, just maybe, everything she had been taught was wrong. She took a deep breath and started walking toward the smoke. The crash site was worse than Ara had imagined. The small ship had torn through the forest canopy and embedded itself in a deep ravine. Trees were snapped like twigs. The ground was scorched black. Metal fragments lay scattered everywhere, still smoking in the cool evening air. Ara approached carefully, keeping to the shadows. The ship's hull was breached in 3 places. Wires hung loose, sparking occasionally. A strange symbol was painted on the side. A blue circle with green continents. Earth. This was a human ship from Earth itself. The beeping came from inside the wreckage. Ara circled around looking for a way in. The main door was crushed shut, but one of the hull breaches was large enough to squeeze through. She hesitated at the edge. This was the moment. Once she went inside, there was no going back. She climbed through. The interior was chaos. Equipment hung from broken mounts. The walls were covered in screens showing text she could not read. And in the center, strapped into a damaged chair, was the human. He was unconscious, his head slumped forward. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. His skin was darker than in the pictures she had seen, a rich brown that reminded her of the forest soil. He wore a green uniform with patches and symbols she did not recognize. Warning: life support failing. Oxygen at 15%. Medical assistance required. The voice came from a small floating sphere near the human's chair. It had a glowing blue center that pulsed as it spoke. An artificial intelligence like the ones Veltari ships used for navigation. The sphere rotated toward Ara. Identify yourself. Are you rescue? I am not rescue, Ara said in careful human language. She had studied it from the archives, but speaking it was different. I am alone here, not human. Veltari. The AI's light flickered. This is bad, very bad. Veltari and humans are not friends. You will kill him. No. Ara moved closer to the human. His breathing was shallow and fast. I will help. I have medicine. Veltari medicine. Why? The AI sounded suspicious. Humans destroyed your colony. Everyone knows this story. Maybe the story is wrong. Ara began examining the human's injuries. The cut on his head was not deep, but he had a bad bruise on his chest. Broken ribs, probably. His left arm hung at a wrong angle. What is his name? Corporal Deho, Earth Colonial Defense Force. The AI drifted closer. I am Spark. I keep him alive, but my power is almost gone. Ship reactor is dead. He will die without help. Ara pulled her pack around and took out her medical supplies. The Veltari medicine might not work perfectly on human biology, but it was better than nothing. She had the purple moss for infection, a paste made from tree bark for pain, and clean water to wash the wounds. I need to move him, she said. My home is 3 hours from here. He cannot stay in this ship. He is too injured to move. Spark's light turned red. Moving him might kill him. Staying here will definitely kill him. Ara began unbuckling the straps that held Deho in his chair. The forest has predators. They will smell the blood. And there might be others looking for the crash. Others? I do not know. But strange things happen in this forest. Ara carefully lifted Deho's injured arm. He groaned but did not wake. Help me. Tell me what I am doing wrong. For the next hour, Ara and Spark worked together. The AI guided her through checking Deho's injuries while she used her knowledge of Veltari anatomy to compare. Humans were surprisingly similar inside. 2 lungs, 1 heart, red blood. The main difference was temperature. Humans were much warmer than Veltari. Ara wrapped Deho's broken arm and bound his ribs as tightly as she dared. She cleaned his wounds with water and applied the purple moss. Then came the hard part, getting him out of the ship. He was heavier than he looked. Ara was strong from her weeks in the forest, but dragging an unconscious human through broken metal was exhausting. Spark helped by lighting the way and warning her about sharp edges. Finally, they emerged into the night air. Now what? Spark asked. You cannot carry him 3 hours. Ara looked around. She needed to make a stretcher. Using pieces of the ship's interior fabric and 2 straight branches, she built a rough carrier. It was not pretty, but it would work. She loaded Deho onto it and began pulling. The journey back to her tree was the longest night of her life. Every few minutes she had to stop and rest. Her hands blistered from gripping the makeshift handles. Twice she heard Cray beasts in the distance and had to hide, terrified they would smell the blood. Spark stayed quiet most of the way, conserving power, but occasionally the AI would speak. Why are you doing this? You do not know him. He is injured and alone, Ara replied, pulling the stretcher over a fallen log. Like I was. But your people and his people are enemies. My people banished me. I am not sure what that makes me anymore. Dawn was breaking when they finally reached her hollow tree. Ara's arms felt like they were on fire. She pulled Deho inside and made him as comfortable as possible on her sleeping area. His breathing was still shallow, but it was steady. He would live, probably. Spark settled onto a small shelf Ara had carved. I will watch him. You should rest. Not yet. Ara prepared more medicine and water. She checked Deho's bandages and adjusted his position so he could breathe easier. Only when she was satisfied did she allow herself to sit down. She looked at the human sleeping in her home. His face was peaceful now, the pain lines smoothed away. He had scars on his hands and neck, the marks of a soldier, but his fingers were long and graceful, an artist's hands. Spark, she said quietly. Why was he here? Why did his ship come to this planet? The AI was quiet for a moment. He was looking for something. Old records. Missing expeditions. He thought he could find answers here. What kind of answers? About the past. About humans in Veltari before the colony incident. Spark's light pulsed softly. He believed the two species met before long ago, but all the records were erased. Ara felt her heart skip. The caves. The symbols. What caves? She told Spark about her discovery. About the ancient carvings showing humans and Veltari together. About the third figure that appeared in scenes of violence. The AI listened in silence. When she finished, Spark's light burned brighter than before. This is important. Very important. Deho needs to see this. First, he needs to heal. Ara stood and moved to the entrance of her tree. The sun was fully up now, filtering through the canopy in golden streams. How long until he wakes? Unknown. Could be hours. Could be days. Human healing is unpredictable. Ara nodded. She gathered her water containers. I will get fresh water. Watch him. If anything changes, call for me. Wait. Spark drifted closer. Thank you for saving him. Not many would do this. Not many would need to. Ara smiled sadly. We are all exiles here, Spark. All of us far from home. She climbed out into the morning light, leaving the human and the AI in her tree. As she walked toward the stream, she wondered what her father would think if he could see her now. His daughter, the traitor, saving the life of a human soldier. But more than that, she wondered what would happen when Deho woke up. Would he see her as an enemy? Would he try to hurt her despite her help? Or would he be different from what she had been taught to expect? The forest whispered around her, its glowing plants beginning to fold away for the day. Somewhere in the distance, a cray beast howled. Life continued, indifferent to the strange alliance forming in the hollow tree. Ara filled her containers and started back. She had survived the forest alone. Now she would see if she could survive it with a human by her side. The thought terrified and excited her in equal measure. When she returned to the tree, Deho was still unconscious. But his color looked better. His breathing was deeper and more regular. Spark reported that his temperature had stabilized. Ara settled in to wait. She cleaned her tools, organized her supplies, and occasionally checked on her patient. The day passed slowly. As evening approached, she prepared a simple meal of roasted tubers and saved some broth in case Deho woke hungry. Just before sunset, his eyes opened. For a moment, he stared at the ceiling, confused. Then his gaze found her, and his eyes went wide with shock and fear. He tried to sit up, gasped in pain, and reached for a weapon that was not there. Easy. Ara held up her hands, showing she was unarmed. You are hurt. Please do not move quickly. Deho stared at her, breathing hard. Veltari, he whispered in his own language. Where am I? Safe, Ara replied in human speech. You crashed. I brought you here. You are safe. Deho did not trust her at first. For 3 days he watched her like she might attack at any moment. He slept with one eye open, flinched when she came close, and barely ate the food she offered. Ara understood. She had been taught to fear humans, and he had been taught to fear her people. Spark helped. The AI translated when their words failed and vouched for Ara's character. She saved your life, Spark reminded him. She dragged you through 3 hours of dangerous forest. She used her own medicine on you. Why? Deho asked, wincing as he tried to sit up. His ribs were healing, but slowly. Why would a Veltari help a human? Because I am not a normal Veltari anymore. Ara sat across from him, maintaining a respectful distance. My father banished me here to die. My own people cast me out for wanting to learn about humans, so maybe I am not your enemy. Deho studied her face. What did you want to learn? The truth. About what really happened at the colony. About why our peoples hate each other so much. She paused, and I think I found something that might answer those questions. She told him about the caves, about the ancient symbols showing humans and Veltari together in peace, about the mysterious third figure. Deho listened with growing excitement, his distrust slowly fading. I knew it, he breathed. I told my commanders there were old human expeditions to this sector, ships that disappeared 200 years ago, but they said I was crazy, that there was no evidence. There is evidence, in the caves. Era leaned forward. But I cannot read all the human symbols. You could help. Deho looked at his injured arm, still bound tightly. When can we go? When you can walk without falling down. It took another week. During that time they talked. Deho told her about Earth, about oceans so large you could not see across them, about cities that stretched to the sky. He showed her pictures on Spark's damaged memory banks, forests and mountains, deserts and snow, creatures of every shape and color. Ara told him about Veltari culture, about the crystal palaces that sang in the wind, about the philosophy of harmony that her people claimed to follow but rarely practiced. She told him about her studies, her father, her banishment. They discovered they were not so different. Both had been trained as soldiers, though Ara's training was ceremonial while Deho's was real. Both loved learning and asking questions. Both had been punished for refusing to accept simple answers. My squad leader hated me, Deho admitted one evening. Said I asked too many questions. Why did we patrol this border? Why did we treat Veltari ships as hostile? Why did the colony incident happen the way it did? He said soldiers should follow orders, not think. My tutors said the same thing. Ara smiled. Princesses should smile and agree. We should not study forbidden subjects or question the Emperor's wisdom. We are both terrible at following rules, Deho laughed, then grabbed his ribs in pain. On the 8th day, Deho walked outside without help. His arm was still weak and his ribs tender, but he could move. Ara gathered supplies while he tested his strength. Tomorrow they would visit the caves. That night a sound woke them both. It was distant but unmistakable, engines. Big ones. Ara and Deho rushed to the tree's entrance. Above the forest canopy they could see lights moving across the sky. Not one or two. Dozens. Ships in formation, running silent with only their running lights visible. Those are not Veltari patterns, Ara whispered. Spark floated between them, scanning the sky. Confirmed. Unknown design, unknown origin, but they are positioned directly over the crash site. Someone is looking for me, Deho said grimly. But those are not Colonial Defense Force ships. Then who? Before anyone could answer, one of the ships broke formation and descended toward the forest. It disappeared below the tree line about a mile from their position. Moments later, another followed. Then another. They are landing, setting up a perimeter. Spark's light flickered red. This is very bad. Ara made a decision. The caves. We go now in the dark. If they are searching the crash site, they might find my tracks. They might follow them here. I cannot fight, Deho protested. Not like this. Then we do not fight. We hide, we learn what they want. Then we decide what to do. Ara was already packing essentials, water, food, weapons, and the data crystal from Tesh. They moved through the dark forest as quietly as possible. Ara led with Deho close behind and Spark providing minimal light. Every sound made them freeze. Every shadow could hide an enemy. They were halfway to the caves when they heard voices. Not Veltari, not human, something else, clicks and whistles mixed with electronic tones. The language of machines more than living things. Ara pulled Deho behind a massive tree root. They watched as 3 figures moved through the forest below them. They were tall and thin, covered in what looked like metal and organic material fused together. Their faces were hidden behind smooth masks. Each carried a weapon that glowed with orange energy. Collectors, Spark whispered, barely audible. Information brokers. Scavengers of technology and secrets. Very dangerous, Squiz. What are they doing here? Deho mouthed. They got their answer when one of the collectors spoke into a communication device. The words were translated through Spark's receivers. Crash site analyzed. Human ship was tracking the old expedition signals. They know about the ruins. Eliminate all evidence. Eliminate all witnesses. Understood, another voice responded. The incident must proceed as planned. Both governments are already positioned. Once we trigger the false flag attack, the war will begin within days. Ara felt ice run through her veins. False flag attack. They were planning to start a war. The collectors moved on, disappearing into the darkness. Ara and Deho stayed hidden for several long minutes, neither daring to breathe. Finally, Spark spoke. "We need to reach the caves. If the collectors are eliminating evidence, those ruins might be next." They moved faster now, fear driving them forward. The caves were still an hour away. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of ships landing, equipment being deployed, a search being organized. They were almost at the cliff face when a voice called out from the darkness. "Wait, do not shoot. Friendly, human." A figure stumbled out of the underbrush, a young woman in a torn Colonial Defense Force uniform. Her face was scratched and dirty. She carried a damaged rifle and looked like she had not slept in days. "Minha?" Deho's eyes went wide. "You are alive?" "Deho." The woman rushed forward, then stopped when she saw Ara. Her rifle came up. "Veltari, get back." "No, wait." Deho stepped between them. "She saved me. She is friendly." Mina did not lower her rifle. "Friendly? Are you insane? Our squad was ambushed by those metal things. Everyone else is dead. And you are traveling with a Veltari? Because those metal things are the real enemy." Ara kept her hands visible and non-threatening. "We just heard them talking. They are called collectors. They are planning to start a war between our peoples." "I know." Mina finally lowered her rifle slightly. "I have been following them for 6 days. They attacked our ship. They killed my squad. And they are setting up some kind of transmitter array in the valley." "A transmitter for what?" Spark asked. "I do not know. But it is big. Really big. And it is pointed at the sky." Minha looked exhausted. "I tried to get close, but there are too many of them. I was hoping to reach any human settlement and warn them, but I am lost. This forest is killing me." Ara made a decision. "The caves. We need to get to the caves. There is information there that might explain everything. Then we decide how to stop them." "Caves?" Mia looked skeptical. "What kind of information?" "The kind that proves humans and Veltari were allies once. The kind that someone wanted buried." Deho gestured to the cliff face. "Trust me, please." Minha looked at him for a long moment, then at Ara, then back to him. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but if she tries anything, she will not. I trust her with my life." Deho smiled weakly. "Literally. She already saved it once." The three of them, plus Spark, squeezed through the cave entrance. Ara lit torches she had prepared beforehand. The ancient symbols came to life in the firelight, covering every surface, holy. Minha breathed. "This is real. This is actually real." They spent the next 2 hours exploring the walls. Spark recorded everything while Deho and Minha translated the human script and Ara worked on the Veltari sections. Slowly, a story emerged. 200 years ago, human explorers had come to this world. They found Veltari already living here in small colonies. Instead of conflict, they shared knowledge. They learned each other's languages. They built together. For 50 years, they lived in peace. Then the collectors arrived. They saw opportunity in 2 rising civilizations. But peaceful neighbors did not buy weapons. Unified peoples did not need information brokers, so the collectors destroyed the evidence of peace. They erased records on both sides. They staged attacks and blamed each side for the other's losses. They created the colony incident, a deliberate poisoning that killed millions, and made sure each side believed the other was responsible. The Cold War that followed made the collectors rich. Both humans and Veltari bought weapons, technology, and intelligence. For 200 years, the collectors had profited from manufactured hatred, and now, based on what they had overheard, the collectors were ready to escalate. They were planning something that would turn the Cold War into a hot one. Millions would die, maybe billions. "We have to stop them," Deho said. The plan was simple, which meant it was probably going to fail. But it was the only plan they had. Ara would use components from Deho's crashed ship, combined with Veltari technology she had made during her time in the forest. Together, they would build a signal booster powerful enough to broadcast across the entire sector. The message would go to both human and Veltari frequencies at the same time, impossible to jam or stop once it started. The problem was power. They needed the collector's transmitter array to give them enough energy to send the signal across space, which meant getting inside the collector camp and holding it long enough to transmit. They worked through the night preparing. Ara gathered every piece of useful technology from the crash site. Minna checked weapons and ammunition. She had her rifle with 3 power cells left, and they had Ara's knife. Not much against an army. Deho and Spark built the signal package. It contained everything from the caves, photos of the symbols, translations, historical records. They compressed it so it would transmit in one quick burst, 30 seconds. That was all they would need. If we die doing this, Mina said as they prepared to move out, I want you to know I still think you are crazy for trusting a Veltari. I am crazy for trusting a human, Ara replied. So we are even, Mina actually smiled. Fair enough. Dawn was breaking when they reached the edge of the collector camp. It was worse than they had feared. Dozens of collectors moved between equipment stations. Automated drones patrolled the perimeter, and in the center the massive transmitter array pointed toward the sky like a metal flower. There, Spark highlighted a control panel near the transmitter's base. That is where we connect. But it is exposed. No cover. Then we need a distraction. Deho checked his injured arm. It was healing but still weak, something that pulls their attention away. Ara looked at the forest around them. The cray beasts that had nearly killed her on her first night. The toxic plants. The unstable terrain. This forest had tried to kill her every day for months. Maybe it was time to return the favor to someone else. I have an idea. You will think I am crazy. We already think you are crazy, Mina said. Tell us anyway. Ara's plan was indeed crazy. But it might work. While Deho and Spark prepared the signal device, Ara and Minha moved through the forest, setting up traps and bait. They used the blue flowers that the cray beasts loved. They damaged trees in specific ways that would make them fall toward the camp. They found a toxic plant nest and very carefully disturbed it, knowing the spores would spread with the morning wind. As the sun rose higher, Ara took a deep breath. Ready? No, Mina admitted. But let us do it anyway. Ara lit the signal fires they had prepared, 3 piles of green wood that produced thick, dark smoke. The smell attracted the cray beasts immediately. Within minutes, a pack of 20 was moving toward the camp, drawn by the smoke and the flower bait Ara had placed. The collectors noticed. Alarm sounded. Drones changed position to intercept the animals. Perfect. While the collectors dealt with the cray beasts, Minha fired her rifle at the damaged trees. They toppled exactly as planned, crashing through the camp's perimeter and destroying 2 equipment stations. More alarms, more confusion. Then the toxic spores hit. Collectors began stumbling, their systems disrupted by the plant toxins. They were not organic enough for it to kill them, but it slowed them down and confused their sensors. Now, Ara shouted. She and Deho ran for the transmitter while Minha provided covering fire. Spark flew ahead, guiding them through the chaos. Collectors were everywhere, but they were disorganized, dealing with multiple threats at once. A collector stepped into their path. Ara hit it with a running tackle, her knife finding a weak point between its armor plates. It went down. She kept moving. Another raised its weapon. Deho grabbed a piece of fallen equipment and threw it, knocking the collector's aim off. The energy bolt went wide. They reached the control panel. Spark plugged in. Uploading. 30 seconds. Hold them. 30 seconds? Mina had caught up to them. We are all going to die. Then we die sending the truth. Ara took position beside her. The collectors had realized what was happening. They were pulling back from the other threats and focusing on the transmitter. A wave of them charged forward, weapons glowing. Mina fired until her rifle overheated. She drew a backup pistol and kept firing. Ara threw everything she could reach, rocks, tools, pieces of broken equipment. Deho swung a metal pipe one-handed, his injured arm hanging useless. 20 seconds, Spark announced. A collector broke through their defense. Its weapon came up, aimed at Spark. If it destroyed the AI, the transmission would fail. Ara jumped in front of the blast. The energy hit her in the shoulder, spinning her around. Pain exploded through her body. She fell hard. Ara! Deho was at her side immediately. Keep going, she gasped. Finish it. 10 seconds, more collectors poured in. Too many. They were going to fail. They were going to die. And no one would know the truth. Then the sky lit up with weapons fire. Ships descended from above. Sleek Veltari cruisers with their distinctive crystal hulls. They fired on the collector positions, scattering the enemy forces. A voice boomed across the camp in Veltari language. Cease hostile action. Identify yourselves. Through her pain, Ara recognized that voice. Commander Tesh. 5 seconds, Spark said calmly. Human ships arrived next, heavier and more angular than the Veltari vessels. They locked weapons on the collector ships that were trying to escape. Both fleets held position, clearly confused about each other but united in stopping the collectors. "Transmission complete," Spark announced. "The truth is broadcasting across all frequencies. Everyone will hear it." Ara let her head fall back. They had done it. The message was out. Tesh landed his ship nearby and rushed out with medical personnel. He stopped when he saw Ara lying wounded beside a human soldier. "Princess, what is happening here?" "Peace," Ara said weakly. "We are trying to make peace." A human officer emerged from one of the landing ships, Captain Sunwoo, according to the markings on her uniform. She surveyed the scene with a tactical eye. "Explain now, why are Veltari forces here? Why are you attacking these unknown vessels?" "We received a transmission," Tesh said. "Historical records. Evidence of a conspiracy. It claimed—" He stopped. "It claimed everything we believed about humans was a lie." "We received the same transmission," Sunwoo said. "About our beliefs regarding the Veltari. It is true." Daeho stood, helping Ara to sit up. "All of it. The collectors manufactured your conflict. They created the colony incident. They erased the evidence of peace, and they were about to start a full-scale war to profit from it." The two commanders looked at each other. Centuries of distrust hung between them. Then Tesh extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I believe we need to talk." Sunwoo took his hand. "Yes, we do." More ships arrived over the next hour. Veltari and human command vessels drawn by the transmission. The collectors tried to flee but were captured by a coordinated effort from both fleets. For the first time in 200 years, humans and Veltari worked together instead of against each other. A medical team treated Ara's wound. The energy burn was serious but not fatal. She would recover. As they worked on her, she watched the scene unfolding around her. Veltari soldiers and human marines standing together. Officers from both sides examining the collector equipment. Scientists already discussing a joint study of the ancient caves. The last ship to arrive was the Imperial cruiser. Ara's heart sank as she recognized the markings. Her father had come personally. Emperor Valken descended from his ship, his face carved from stone as always. He walked through the camp, taking in everything. The collector prisoners, the mixed fleet, the humans working alongside his people. And finally his eyes found Ara. He crossed to where she sat, bandaged and exhausted. For a long moment he just looked at her, then he knelt down to her level. "My daughter, you were right. About everything." His voice was quiet, barely audible. "I let my pain over Tekvar blind me. I wanted someone to blame and the collectors gave me an easy target. But you saw through the lies. Father, No, let me finish." Valken took her hand. "I banished you because you questioned me. Because you refused to accept hatred as the answer. I called you a traitor. But you were the only loyal one. Loyal to the truth. Loyal to peace." Tears ran down Ara's face. "I just wanted to understand. And you did. Better than any of us." The Emperor stood and addressed the crowd. "Princess Ara is hereby pardoned of all charges. Her banishment is lifted. She is restored to her full position and honors." A cheer went up from the Veltari forces. Even some of the humans clapped, not fully understanding but recognizing the emotion. But Ara held up her hand. "Father, I accept your pardon, but I do not want my old position back." Silence fell. Valken looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean I found something better here. A purpose." Ara gestured to Daeho and Minha, to Spark floating nearby, to the mixed forces working together. "Make me an ambassador. Let me build bridges between our peoples. Let me turn what I learned in exile into something that helps everyone." The Emperor smiled. It was the first real smile Ara had seen on his face in years. "As you wish, Ambassador Ara." Over the next weeks, the truth spread across both civilizations. The collector conspiracy was exposed. The manufactured incident at Tekvar